Hi, and welcome to another live episode of Marketplace Masters. Marketplace Masters, and this series in particular, is focused on going deeper into the challenges that Amazon and marketplace agencies face to lift performance via very practical actions and insights. I am your host, Paul Zonneveld, and today we're going to discuss how you can grow your clients' profits outside the Amazon e-commerce ecosystem. Now, to help us do that, I have invited Leszek Lekstan to join us and to share his expertise. Let me quickly introduce him to you. Leszek is the co-founder of Point Story, an Amazon advertising partner agency that helps increase ROI through content optimization, advertising execution, prospecting, and discovering hidden audiences. Leszek has held a variety of roles in Fortune 500 companies, from usability research and design, web operations, project and program management, marketing, and product management. He has spent valuable time at Amazon scaling self-service ad products, including product ads, text ads, and sponsored products. He brings an expertise in both the strategic planning and execution, helping brands scale on Amazon, so brings a broad range of experience to the conversation today. Great to have you on today's episode, Leszek.
Thank you so much, Paul. Excited to be here.
So what struck me as I was introducing you, there is so much Amazon expertise in your CV and background, yet here we are talking about life outside the Amazon ecosystem, right? And we're actually probably not going to talk much about Amazon at all. So for those of you that are tuning in today and thinking that you're going to pick up a lot of practical tips on how you optimize your ads on the Amazon platform openly, probably Leszek is probably your guy, but we're not going to be talking about them today. So hit him up separately. What we are talking about is the world outside Amazon and all the other options and digital marketplaces that are out there. Now, for most of us that are so Amazon focused, I thought maybe where we can start, Leszek, is with the landscape. What is the outside Amazon? What does the landscape look like? And it's super diverse, but, how do you look at the landscape outside the world of Amazon?
Sure. It's hard to talk about e-commerce with not talking about Amazon. So Amazon is still, a dominant force in the e-commerce, but we are seeing the dynamics changing a little bit. But obviously Amazon is still the main player. We have some data that we pulled from eMarketer. But still for about 40% of e-commerce in the US happens on Amazon. That number dipped a little bit in 2022, about 36%, but it's still a dominant force. At the same time, we are seeing other marketplaces and other retailers picking up momentum with Walmart and Home Depot and Best Buy and Target. While they're increasing their percentage of the overall market share, they're still very small relative to Amazon. But we are seeing a shift. We are seeing our clients looking to diversify for multiple different reasons. I think we'll dive into that in a second. But we are seeing interest and we are seeing performance and performance in terms of top line and in performance from the perspective of profitability from other retailers and marketers and e-tailers.
So, obviously pretty big landscape, and sometimes the headline numbers don't always do the talking. But what I'm really interested in is, so I actually, confession time here. Last year I ran a straw poll, and I asked agencies, hey, if you have another couple of hours of, hypothetically speaking, if we all had the couple of free hours every week, which we don't, how would you use that to drive your clients' sales and profits? And certainly in the North American context, the feedback that came back is say, look, there's so many opportunities on Amazon. We're going to go harder, faster. There's always more things to be done. And there was a real shying away from considering other marketplaces. I don't get that vibe at all. I mean, I've just been coming back from a couple of different conferences and talking to different agencies. A diversification to other channels is a really big topic. It's on everyone's mind. I'd love to get your thoughts on why do you think the wind's starting to shift or has shifted already? What is the driving force behind agencies and even brand owners starting to look outward to other options?
Yeah, definitely. That's been our experience as well. And from my experience, from my agency's experience, talking to clients, talking to brands, there's several different things that are happening. One, I think if we look at Amazon and specifically the fees associated with selling on Amazon, we've seen an increase in those fees. And that's, yeah, thank you for showing the graph. That is, you can see from 2017 to 2022, those fees as a percent of revenue generated on Amazon on average increased from 40 to 50% in 5 years. And while some of these fees associated with services that became a little bit more expensive, like FBA, there are others that maybe used to be optional, but are no longer optional. So obviously advertising comes to play in this regard. Not only it's non-optional, it's also becoming a bigger part of the puzzle. And it's still, don't get me wrong, right? We still can see tremendous profits from Amazon, especially as the platform evolves from the advertising perspective, from the data perspective, from the different insights we can draw. But the number is quite telling over time. So I think this is a big piece where we are seeing profitability being impacted by these additional fees on Amazon. And I think the other big piece is that we are seeing quite a bit of investment from other platforms into their capabilities. I think Amazon is still light years ahead in terms of capabilities, especially when it comes to advertising, but others are catching up slowly, but they are catching up. And we do see improvement in targeting capabilities. We are also seeing more eyeballs. And so I think it just makes sense to look at these other marketplaces, these other retailers where there are audiences that we can target and put in front of our brands.
And Leszek, I'm just wondering at this point, can you paint a bit of a picture, maybe a client example, make it real for us? What would this look like in terms of growing your business and growing profits?
Yeah, so I think a good example to share is one of a brand we worked with. That was a pizza oven company. And when we first started talking to them, they were selling on just one channel. They were just selling on eBay. And we were able to integrate them across initially around 20 different retailers and e-tailers. And then ultimately over 40 different integrations that we would put in place. And there are multiple things that I think are worth noting. This is also an interesting case because we were actually in the first stage, we didn't even run any ads. It's the growth that we've seen is all through sheer presence. So just from that perspective, just from the perspective of listing these guys on these other places, within a year, the revenue increased 12x. Again, without any media spend behind it. We've seen a tremendous impact on their SEO, on their online presence. Specifically, when you go to Google and search, and they would show up across all these different retailers and e-tailers. That also helped build credibility of the brand. This is a kind of a fun story too, because of that, they actually got picked up by the Ellen Show, and they had a whole giveaway on Ellen. And after that, the business really took off. And so this is a really good story of, again, not spending any media dollars, just enabling integration and enabling these products being listed on other retailers. So and it is a process. Typically, when we start talking to a brand, we want to make sure that we are looking at retailers and e-tailers that make sense. We are seeing that while maybe the eyeballs are not obviously as big as on Amazon, but we are seeing a high purchase intent, especially if we can list products specific to a category where the audience is going for specific categories. So you can think of maybe Home Depot, home decor, Home Depot, Wayfair, Overstock, House, etc., where they're individually they're much smaller, but customers go there to find home decor products. So I think there's just a tremendous opportunity just by listing on these other locations.
Yeah, I think you raised some really good points here. Obviously, size is not the only thing. It's easy to look at Amazon and go, it's so massive, and these guys are so small. But a lot of these obviously are curated marketplaces, which means not everyone can get on there. But also the competition is significantly less. So I actually remember doing some of analysis on the marketplace here in Australia, and just looking at sort of a very quick and dirty ratio. What's the number of page visits or eyeballs divided by the number of sellers for a particular category? And actually, if you do the ratio analysis, it actually it looks very, very favorable. And obviously it's much better to get good ranking and the like. I think the second point you make around audience fit is absolutely crucial, right? So high intent, but usually very unique audience, either much more female, certain age, or male, or depending on the category, you can really come up with a winning proposition here. So, just going back to the pizza ovens case study, that's great study, and feels like, definitely about being in the right place at the right time, which is great. Really fortunate. There's no need to spend any advertising, but we do know that advertising is actually a big game. Certainly, it's hard to survive without advertising on Amazon. So I wanted to ask you, what is the role of advertising for these marketplaces? Can you even advertise, and what does that look like?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So you kind of alluded to it earlier when we were talking about Amazon and some of the things that are happening, right? Amazon's expanded their advertising capabilities pretty substantially, and it's absolutely critical now in order to achieve results to advertise, not just through PPC, but also DSP and even driving external traffic to Amazon and to help. And there's a competition and all that, the advertising industry is really interesting. I do have a little stat there to shows this is basically historical and projected growth in terms of search ad spending from 2020 to 2026. A quick caveat on that data: this data includes advertising that's come from websites and apps that are engaged in retail e-commerce. But it doesn't include, social networks and search engines. This is just looking at actual point of sales locations. So you can see the tremendous growth. And if you look at this growth, and then you also look how or where Amazon is right now as a proportion of that, Amazon is around 78% as of 2021, and then 2022 about 76% of all the search spend happens on Amazon. So if you recall from the previous stat, we were talking about 40% of e-commerce in terms of revenue, and about almost 80% of ad spend. So you see this proportions are quite interesting. And so that opens up an opportunity to run advertising on other location. We are seeing that for the most part, there are, some of these marketplaces have their native advertising solutions, other, use other solutions like Citrus Ads or Promote IQ. But what we are seeing is that while the level of sophistication of these ads is nowhere yet close to Amazon, it's also, they can be very, very effective. They can be very, very effective just because of the level of competition is much smaller than on Amazon. So we have worked with several clients, and we are seeing really, really strong results, both from the advertising perspective, but also the impact of advertising on the total business performance on the platform.
So give me a sense of, very practical, right? Let's take Home Depot. What are the sort of ads can you run, and what's the typical, I'm assuming it's the cost per click model. Like, what is the typical cost per click that you pay for a popular product on Home Depot? And I know we're not comparing apples and apples, and it's really unfair, but it is an interesting stat nonetheless.
Yeah, no, it is. So with Home Depot, we've worked, we ran ads through Promote IQ to run the advertising there, and category, but I believe it's consistent across categories. There is a $1 minimum, and from all the media that we ran, we never got over that $1 minimum. So there's quite, that tells you a little bit about competition. We were still, we didn't even get over the minimum. So our CPC was $1 and continues to be $1. In home decor, for example, where our average order value is around $160. So when you look at CPC versus price of the goods sold on average, is pretty attractive. Obviously, there's the conversion rate aspect of it, but overall, it's pretty attractive. In fact, the example that comes to mind is a home decor client that we worked with, that when we engaged working with them, they were just selling organically. They weren't really running any ads. And we started running ads about 4% or 5% of total sales. We dedicated and slowly start scaling. But what was quite incredible is that within 30 days, we were able to see an increase in total sales by almost 200%. And that was pretty stunning. On average, we saw average daily sales increase by 170%. So the impact of ads on overall business was pretty amazing. And if we just were to isolate the advertising performance from the total number or the total revenue, we still saw a healthy return on ad spend. It was just over 4 in terms of return on ad spend, based on a very small, and again, based on first 30 days, which, as we know, the first 30 days, things can get better substantially after that. And that's what we're seeing already. We are seeing, better return on ad spend already, few months in. So, while you can get good traction organically, running ads on these platforms really help accelerate. And I think the momentum right now is really good, because we're still are seeing very limited competition. And, by applying some best practices from the world of advertising, can really make a difference with relatively low ad spend.
Yeah, wow, that's fantastic. So I'm sure at this stage, we've got a lot of listeners who are starting to think about, okay, this all sounds very interesting. In fact, some of this may sound a little bit too good to be true. Certainly those, although, it does feel like a CPC of $1 is almost still too high, because it's not being pushed up at all. I'm wondering, obviously there's a flaw there. But, take us through, some of the success factors here. I'm sure it's not a good fit for every single product across every single category. How would you summarize or distill it down in terms of, things to think about, or things that will put you in a better position to take advantage of this opportunity?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that tend to work really, really well. I think first, obviously being prepared to fulfill the demand. So, having ample inventory to fulfill the demand. And, that I don't really have a hard number, but typically what we do when we talk to brands, we look at their existing business, and we look at the channels that they're already on, and then we create forecasts based on what we've seen historically. So, having inventory is one, but then also being able to add more inventory as we see success. So, we watch the inventory pretty quickly. Once we start seeing certain sell-through rate, once we start seeing the inventory levels dropping between below 50% of where we started, we want to be able to immediately replenish the inventory. We don't want to lose any momentum with that, because that has pretty bad consequences, as we know. So I think number one is, being ready to fulfill the demand that there will be. The other one I would say is price point. We typically want to see products with wholesale price above $20, $25, just because the economics. And I think, as we even look at Amazon, of course, Amazon has different programs for small and light and things like that. But in that regard, we do see products with that price point above $20 being an important factor. And then, while when we first start, we rely mostly on organic, we do want to have a plan for the media. And we typically want to have a media plan for at least 6 months, just to continue the growth and make sure that we can support the growth and can support winning market share. So I would say high level, those three things: inventory, price point, and then media commitment for about 6 months.
Yeah, very, very practical. I mean, the price point's also critical here as well. It's easy to sell, much harder to make money, and price point continues to be a big factor in this. So that's great. Great. Well,
Absolutely.
look, we're almost out of time, but I thought maybe just to draw things to a close, I want to just ask you, what's the elevator pitch here? If you sort of take it up a level, we sort of get into like a summary mode. And maybe there's other agencies that are just Amazon focused right now, and it's a pretty big industry. There's all enough fish to go around, so to speak. How would you prep others to say this is the business case? These are the key points to make to your client as to why this is at least an interesting conversation and opportunity to explore.
Yeah, I think there's multiple, and some of these we've already touched on. But I think overall, growing market share, putting your product or your client's product in front of audience that is looking for that product, what we talked about, very specific to the category. We've also seen tremendous increase in SEO by listing and having presence across these retailers. That really helps with SEO. Obviously, the big one is the risk, managing risk and diversifying that risk of Amazon, not having all your eggs in one basket. And then, also lower competition on some of these marketplaces. There's definitely, although they are growing, they're still relatively less competitive. And I think the last one is just, they are getting better. The levers that we can pull on some of these places are getting better. They're getting more sophisticated. So the timing is really favorable. I mean, from what we've seen success, and I think that's the right thing to do right now.
Very, very good. Thank you for that great practical summary. Lots of good arguments there to, at least in 2023, to start exploring these other channels, outside the Amazon environment. We are out of time, so we need to wrap it up here. Leszek, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate you sharing your expertise and sharing your experiences with your clients. Sharing some really interesting metrics as well along the way. You certainly helped us demystify this topic, and provided lots of practical tips and insights. Now, for those, if there's any viewers that are interested in working with you, having a conversation with you, partnering with you, what is the best way to get in touch with you and Point Story?
Probably best is to email me directly. It's Leszek at Point Story. So it's LESZEK at pointstory.io. You can also contact our biz dev team, growth at Point Story, but probably the best is just to contact me directly. I'll definitely would love to have a conversation with you guys, and get on a call and see what we can do.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Leszek, and we look forward to having you next time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Paul. It's been a pleasure chatting, and hopefully that was a good conversation, and I'm really looking forward to connecting soon again.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone, that is it for today's episode of Marketplace Masters. Thank you so much for watching live, watching on demand, or tuning in via our podcasts after the fact. Don't forget, head to merchantspring.io to book your personalized tour of our multi-marketplace omnichannel analytics platform. We obviously support Amazon, but also many of the marketplaces that Leszek spoke about today. Until next time, take care.